They betrayed and chained her. A human stopped the train in Time Part 1. The Corinth was not a beautiful ship. It was a massive transport vessel made of dark metal and sharp angles, built by the Velith Dominion to carry cargo across the stars. But Nyla Voss had learned that cargo meant many things to the Velith. Sometimes it meant food and supplies. Sometimes it meant weapons. And sometimes it meant people. Nyla was 26 years old, with short brown hair and tired eyes. She had worked as a cargo handler on the Corinth for 8 months. The job paid well, and humans were allowed to work on Velith ships as part of a trade agreement between their species. She kept her head down, did her work, and tried not to ask questions. That was the safest way to survive on a ship full of aliens who considered humans to be lesser beings. The Velith were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. They moved with a strange grace that made Nyla uncomfortable. Their voices were deep and cold, and they rarely spoke to the human workers unless giving orders. Commander Drex was the worst of them. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with scars across his face from some ancient battle. He watched the humans with suspicion, as if waiting for them to make a mistake. On the 3rd day of their current journey, Nyla was sent to inspect the cargo hold in the lower section of the ship. It was a part of the vessel she had never visited before. The corridors were darker there, and the air smelled stale and old. She followed her instructions and found the door marked with a symbol she did not recognize. The door opened with a hiss, and Nyla stepped inside. What she found made her stop breathing. The hold was nearly empty. There were no crates, no supplies, no weapons. There was only a single figure sitting in the center of the room, bound to a metal chair by chains that glowed with a faint blue light. The figure was female, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dim lighting. She had 4 arms, each one locked in place by the strange chains. Her eyes were closed, and her head hung forward as if she were sleeping or dead. Nyla had seen many alien species during her time in space, but she had never seen a Thundari before. She knew them only from stories. They were a proud and ancient race, known for their telepathic abilities and their long history of conflict with the Velith. The 2 species had been at war many times over thousands of years. The Thundari female opened her eyes. They were deep purple, like the color of a dying star. She looked at Nyla without fear or surprise, as if she had been expecting someone to come. "You are human," the Thundari said. Her voice was soft and musical, but there was pain beneath the words. Nyla nodded slowly. She knew she should leave. She knew she should report what she had found and forget about it. But something in those purple eyes made her stay. "My name is Saren Kale," the Thundari continued. "I was once a diplomat for my people. I spent 30 years working for peace between my species and the Velith. I believed that we could end the cycle of war and hatred. I believed that words could be stronger than weapons." "What happened?" Nyla asked. Her voice came out as a whisper. Saren smiled, but it was a sad smile full of broken dreams. "My own people betrayed me. My sister sits on the High Council of Thandara. She signed the order to hand me over to the Velith as a gesture of good faith. They called it diplomacy. They called it necessary sacrifice. But it was neither of those things. It was cowardice." Nyla felt something cold settle in her stomach. "They gave you to their enemies?" "The Velith demanded a symbol of Thundari submission," Saren explained. "Someone important enough to matter, but expendable enough to sacrifice. I fit both requirements. My work for peace made me famous. My work for peace also made me dangerous to those who profit from war. My sister chose to remove me rather than risk losing her power." The chains around Saren's body pulsed with that strange blue light. Nyla noticed that the Thundari woman looked weaker than she should. Her silver skin had a grayish tint, and her breathing was shallow. "Those chains," Nyla said. "What are they doing to you?" "They are called neural suppressors," Saren answered. "They bind my body, but they also drain my life force. The Veleth want me alive when I reach their homeworld. They plan to execute me in public as proof of their victory over my people. But the chains ensure that I will be too weak to resist or speak in my defense. By the time we arrive, I will be nothing but a shell." Nyla felt anger rising in her chest. She had seen injustice before. She had seen cruelty and violence and all the terrible things that sentient beings did to each other. But there was something about this situation that felt different. This was not random cruelty. This was calculated betrayal by those who should have protected Saren the most. "I need to go," Nyla said. "I was not supposed to find you. If they catch me here, I will be in trouble." Saren nodded. "I understand. You have your own life to protect. I do not blame you for walking away. Many have done so before." Nyla turned toward the door, but her feet refused to move. She stood there for a long moment, fighting with herself. Every part of her training told her to leave. Every survival instinct screamed at her to mind her own business. The Veleth would not hesitate to punish her if they discovered she had spoken to the prisoner. But Nyla was human. And humans had a strange habit of doing things that made no logical sense. She turned back to Saren. "I will return tonight. I will bring you water and food if I can find any. It is not much, but it is something." Saren's purple eyes widened with surprise. "Why would you risk yourself for me? You do not know me. We are not even the same species." Nyla thought about the question. She thought about all the reasons she should not care about a stranger locked in chains. She thought about the safe and simple life she could have if she just walked away. "Because someone should," Nyla said finally. "Because you deserve better than to die alone in the dark, with no one caring what happens to you. Because I am here, and I can do something, even if it is small." Saren stared at her for a long time. Then she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "The Veleth call your species weak because you care about things that do not benefit you. They say your emotions make you foolish and easy to defeat." Nyla shrugged. "Maybe they are right. But I would rather be foolish than be the kind of person who watches someone suffer and does nothing." She left the cargo hold and walked back through the dark corridors toward her quarters. Her heart was beating fast, and her hands were shaking slightly. She had just made a decision that could destroy everything she had worked for. She had just chosen to help a stranger who had no way of helping her in return. It was, by any reasonable measure, a stupid thing to do. But Nyla had never claimed to be reasonable. She was human, and humans did strange things for strange reasons. They helped those who could not help themselves. They stood up when sitting down was easier. They stopped trains that were not supposed to stop. She did not know it yet, but Nyla Voss had just taken the first step on a path that would change the galaxy forever. They betrayed and chained her. A human stopped. The train in Time Part 5. The human vessel Steadfast was a warship built for speed and strength. It cut through the debris field of the fractured zone like a blade through water, its hull gleaming silver in the light of distant stars. Behind it came two more ships, smaller but equally deadly. They surrounded the Corinth like wolves circling wounded prey. Captain Laura Reed was the first to board. She was a woman in her 40s, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. She walked through the corridors of the Veleth transport with a squad of armed soldiers behind her, and she did not flinch when Commander Drex's officers tried to block her path. "Stand aside," she said. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. This ship triggered an emergency beacon in human-monitored space. That gives me full inspection rights under Article 7 of the Transit Agreement. Any attempt to prevent my investigation will be recorded and reported to the Galactic Assembly. The Veleth officers looked at each other uncertainly. Drex was still in the medical bay, his shoulder wound being treated. Without their commander, they did not know how to respond to this unexpected situation. Nyla stepped forward. She was bruised and exhausted, her throat still raw from Drex's grip. But she held her head high as she approached Captain Reed. "Ma'am," she said, "my name is Nyla Voss. I am a human citizen working on this ship. I triggered the emergency beacon because this vessel is carrying an innocent prisoner to an illegal execution." Reed studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Show me." Nyla led the captain and her soldiers to the hidden cargo hold. When the door opened and Reed saw Saren chained to the chair, her expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. "Who is this woman?" Reed asked. "Her name is Saren Kale," Nyla explained. "She's a Dendari diplomat who spent her life working for peace between her people and the Veloth. Her own government betrayed her and handed her over as a political sacrifice. The Veloth are taking her to their homeworld for public execution. She has committed no crime except wanting the wars to end." Reed approached the prisoner slowly. Saren looked up at her with tired purple eyes. The silver of her skin had faded to gray, and her forearms hung limp in their chains. She looked like someone who had already given up hope. "Is this true?" Reed asked gently. "Were you betrayed by your own people?" Saren nodded weakly. "My sister signed the order. She sits on our High Council. She chose power over family and politics over justice. I have accepted my fate. I did not expect anyone to care enough to stop it." "Someone did care," Reed said, glancing at Nyla. "A human cargo handler risked everything to save you. She stopped this entire convoy to give you a chance at survival." She turned to her soldiers. "Find a way to remove these chains. Contact our medical team and tell them to prepare for a critical patient." "Captain," one of the Veloth officers spoke up, "this is a Dominion matter. The prisoner was handed over legally by her own government. You have no authority to interfere." Reed turned to face him. "I am invoking the right of sanctuary. Under human law, any person fleeing persecution may request protection on human soil or vessels. This ship is now considered an extension of human territory for the purpose of this inspection. Saren Kale is under my protection. The Veloth Dominion will consider this an act of war," the officer said. His voice was shaking with anger. "You are stealing a prisoner that rightfully belongs to us." "Then let the Dominion declare war," Reed replied. "Let them explain to the Galactic Assembly why they want to execute an innocent woman whose only crime was wanting peace. Let them show the galaxy what kind of justice they believe in." She stepped closer to the officer, her eyes like steel. "Or they can accept that this one woman is beyond their reach and move on. The choice is theirs." The officer fell silent. He knew, as everyone in the room knew, that the Veloth could not afford a war with humanity right now. Their forces were stretched thin from other conflicts. Their economy was weakened by decades of military spending. A war over one prisoner, especially one whose execution would look like petty revenge to the rest of the galaxy, would be a disaster that the human engineers worked on the chains. Nyla watched anxiously as they examined the blue glowing bindings, searching for a way to deactivate them without triggering the deadly failsafe. Cody was there too, lending his expertise and explaining what little he knew about Veloth technology. After 2 hours, they found a solution. By overloading the power supply with a carefully controlled surge, they could disable the chains without activating the kill switch. It was risky, but it was the only option they had. "Do it," Reed ordered. The engineers activated their equipment. The chains sparked and crackled. Saren cried out in pain as energy surged through her body. For a terrible moment, Nyla thought they had failed, that the failsafe had triggered and Saren was dying right in front of them. Then the chains fell away. Saren collapsed forward. and Nyla caught her before she hit the floor. The Dendari woman was barely conscious, her body trembling from the ordeal. But she was alive. She was free. "You did it," Saren whispered. "You actually did it." Nyla held her close. "I told you I would. I keep my promises." They transferred Saren to the Steadfast and brought her to the medical bay. Human doctors worked through the night to stabilize her condition. The neural chains had done terrible damage, draining years of life force that she might never recover. But she would survive. She would have a chance to rebuild. The Corinth was allowed to continue its journey without its most important prisoner. Commander Drex was forced to explain to his superiors how a single human cargo handler had defeated him and stolen his captive. The explanation did not go well for him. Word of what happened spread quickly through the galaxy. The story was told in markets and meeting halls, in military academies and diplomatic chambers. A human woman had stopped a prisoner convoy. A human woman had defied the Velith Dominion. A human woman had saved a stranger simply because it was the right thing to do. Some species called it foolish. They said humans were reckless and emotional and incapable of understanding the complicated realities of galactic politics. They said that one day, this tendency to interfere would bring disaster down on humanity's head. But others saw something different. They saw a species that would not accept injustice, even when acceptance was easier. They saw a species that valued individual lives, even when those lives belonged to strangers from enemy nations. They saw a species that was dangerous, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their stubborn refusal to look away from suffering. Saren recovered slowly on a human space station. Nyla visited her often, and they became friends across the vast gulf of species and culture. One day, Saren asked the question that had haunted her since the beginning. "Why did you do it?" "You had nothing to gain. You risked everything for someone you did not know." "I still do not understand." Nyla thought about the answer. She thought about her mother working double shifts. She thought about her grandmother's stories about humans being the universe's biggest troublemakers. She thought about all the times in history when people had chosen to stand up instead of sit down. "Because I was there," Nyla said finally. "Because I could. Because someone had to." That is what humans do. We see someone in chains and we try to break them free. We see a train heading toward disaster and we try to stop it. We do not always succeed. We do not always survive. But we always try. Saren reached out and took Nyla's hand. Her grip was weak, but it was warm. "Then perhaps," she said softly, "my dream of peace was not so foolish after all. Perhaps if more beings in this galaxy were like you, the wars would finally end." Nyla smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe we would just find new things to argue about. Humans are good at that too." They both laughed, and for a moment, the galaxy did not seem quite so dark. The story of the human who stopped the train spread further and wider with each passing year. It became a legend, then a lesson, then a warning. Because now every species in the galaxy knew something important about humanity. They would not look away. They would not stay silent. They would not let the train keep rolling. And that made them the most dangerous species of all. They betrayed and chained her. A human stopped the train in Time Part 4. The navigation chamber was bathed in the red glow of emergency lights. Alarms wailed through the ship like wounded animals. The beacon stood dark and silent behind Nyla, its power completely shut down. Throughout the convoy, dozens of ships were grinding to a halt, their navigation systems frozen by the sudden loss of guidance. But none of that mattered to Commander Drex. He stood in the doorway with his weapon drawn, his gray face twisted with rage. His 4 eyes moved between Nyla and Cody, calculating, measuring, deciding how best to punish them for their crime. "You have made a terrible mistake," Drex said. His voice was calm, but Nyla could hear the fury beneath the surface. Do you understand what you have done? You have endangered every ship in this convoy. You have committed an act of sabotage against the Velith Dominion. Your government will have no choice but to hand you over for execution." Nyla stood her ground. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, but she refused to show fear. "I stopped a train carrying an innocent woman to her death. If that is a crime, then your laws are broken." Drax laughed coldly. "Innocent? The Vendari gave her to us. Her own people called her a criminal. Her own sister signed the order. Who are you, a simple cargo handler, to question the judgment of entire civilizations?" "I am human," Nyla said. "And humans do not stand by while innocent people suffer. Not for politics. Not for peace treaties. Not for any reason that matters less than doing what is right." "Right?" Drax stepped closer, his weapon aimed at Nyla's chest. "You speak of right and wrong as if they are real things. They are not. They are stories that weak species tell themselves to feel better about their insignificance. The strong take what they want. The weak accept what they are given. That is the only truth in this universe." Cody moved to stand beside Nyla. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "If that is true, then why are you so afraid of one human woman with no weapons and no power? Why does Saren frighten you enough to drag her across the galaxy in chains?" Drax's eyes narrowed. "The Vendari is not a threat. She is a symbol. Her execution will prove to the galaxy that the Velith cannot be defied. It will remind every species that standing against us leads only to destruction." "No," Nyla said. "It will prove that you are afraid. It will prove that one woman's dream of peace scared you so much that you had to destroy her. And that fear will spread. Others will see it. They will know that the Velith are not as powerful as they pretend to be." Drax raised his weapon. "Enough. I am going to kill you now. Then I will restart the beacon and continue our journey. Your sacrifice will mean nothing." He fired, but Nyla was already moving. She dove to the side, feeling the heat of the energy blast pass inches from her face. Cody threw himself at Drax, tackling the massive Velith with all his strength. It was like watching a child attack a mountain, but it was enough to knock the weapon off target. The two of them crashed to the floor. Drax threw Cody off easily, sending him sliding across the metal surface. But Nyla was there, grabbing a heavy maintenance tool from the floor and swinging it at Drax's weapon arm. The impact made a sound like breaking stone. Drax roared with pain and dropped his weapon. "You dare!" he snarled, rising to his full height. "You dare strike a commander of the Velith?" Nyla did not answer. She swung the tool again, aiming for his head. Drax caught it with one hand and ripped it from her grip. He grabbed her throat with his other hand and lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. "I will break you slowly," he said, squeezing tighter. "I will make you watch as I kill your friend. Then I will drag what remains of you to Velith Prime and show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us." Black spots danced in Nyla's vision. She could not breathe. She could not think. All she could do was claw uselessly at the iron grip, crushing her throat. Then something slammed into Drax from behind. Cody had found another tool, a longer one meant for reaching high equipment. He swung it like a spear, driving the pointed end into Drax's back. The commander howled and dropped Nyla, spinning to face this new attack. Cody hit him again and again, driving him backward toward the wall. Nyla gasped for air, her throat burning. She saw Drax's dropped weapon lying on the floor and lunged for it. Her fingers closed around the grip just as Drax threw Cody across the room. She aimed at the commander and fired. The blast caught Drax in the shoulder. He staggered, purple blood spraying from the wound. For a moment, he stood there, swaying on his feet, his four eyes wide with disbelief. Then he collapsed to his knees. "Impossible," he whispered. You are nothing. You are insects. How could you possibly defeat me? Nyla kept the weapon trained on him. Because we fight for something more than power. Because there are things worth risking everything for. Because humans do not give up, even when we should. The alarms continued to wail. Somewhere in the distance, Nyla heard footsteps. More Velith were coming. They did not have much time. The prisoner, she said to Cody. We need to free her before they get here. They left Drex bleeding on the floor and ran through the corridors toward the cargo hold. The ship was in chaos. Crew members rushed past them without paying attention, too focused on the emergency to notice two humans running in the wrong direction. They reached the hidden door and burst into the prisoner hold. Saren was still chained to her chair, but her eyes were open. She had seen what happened through the telepathic connection she had created earlier. She knew that they had succeeded. The chains, Nyla said, dropping to her knees beside the chair. How do we remove them? There is a control code, Saren whispered. Only Drex knows it. The chains are designed to kill me if anyone tries to remove them by force. Cody cursed under his breath. Then we need to make Drex talk. We need to go back and force him to give us the code. There is no time, Saren said. The other Velith will reach him soon. They will learn what happened. They will come for all of us. Nyla looked at the chains wrapped around Saren's body. They pulsed with that terrible blue light, still draining her life force. Every moment that passed brought the Thundari closer to death. But there had to be another way. There had to be something they could do. Then she heard it. A sound that cut through the alarms and the chaos and the fear. A sound that made her heart leap with sudden wild hope. A human voice, crackling through the ship's communication system. Velith Transport Corinth. This is Captain Lara Reed of the human vessel Steadfast. We have detected your emergency beacon and are responding according to treaty protocol. Prepare to be boarded for inspection and assistance. Any resistance will be considered an act of aggression. Human patrol ships. They had come. The emergency signal had reached them after all. NYL. I looked at Saren and smiled. Help is here. We are going to get you out of those chains. I promise. For the first time since they met, Saren smiled back. It was a weak smile, fragile and uncertain. But it was real. The train had stopped. And now, finally, someone was coming to help. They betrayed and chained her. A human stopped the train in Time Part 3. The fractured zone was a graveyard of ancient ships and broken dreams. Thousands of years ago, two forgotten civilizations had fought a war so terrible that it shattered an entire region of space. The wreckage still floated there, massive hulks of metal and stone drifting through the void like the bones of dead giants. No signals could pass through the interference. No ships could navigate safely at high speed. It was the perfect place to disappear. The Corinth entered the fractured zone on the 6th day of its journey. Nyla felt the ship slow down as it picked its way through the debris field. She knew that once they passed through to the other side, they would be in Velith space. After that, nothing could save Saren. She found Cody Warren in the engine room. He was a tall man with messy blonde hair and grease stains on his hands. He had been a friend to Nyla since her first day on the ship. They shared meals together and complained about the Velith together and dreamed about the day they could finally return home. Cody was good and kind and everything that Nyla needed right now. I need your help, she said. Cody looked up from the console he was repairing. His eyes were tired, but they sharpened when he saw the expression on her face. What kind of help? Nyla told him everything. She told him about Saren and the chains and the execution waiting at the end of the journey. She told him about Drex's threats and the impossible choice she faced. She told him that she could not stand by and watch an innocent woman die for the crime of wanting peace. When she finished, Cody was silent for a long time. He stared at the floor, his jaw tight with tension. "You know what you are asking," he said finally. "If we try to stop this ship, we could start a war. Humans and Velith have been at peace for 20 years. That peace protects billions of lives." "I know," Nyla said. "If we fail, we will die. The Velith will kill us without hesitation. And even if we succeed, our own government might punish us to maintain diplomatic relations. I know that too." Cody looked up at her. "Then why? Why risk everything for a stranger you met a week ago?" Nyla thought about the question. It was the same question Saren had asked. It was the same question she had asked herself 100 times. The answer was simple, but it was also complicated. It was the kind of answer that made sense in your heart, but sounded foolish when you said it out loud. "Because I did not sign up to be part of an execution," she said. "Because there are things more important than safety. Because if we let fear control us, we become the kind of people who hand over their own sisters to be murdered for political convenience." Cody was quiet again. Then he laughed softly and shook his head. "You know, my grandmother used to say that humans were the universe's biggest troublemakers. She said we could never leave well enough alone. She said we would stick our noses into anything that smelled like injustice. Was she right? She was always right." Cody stood up and wiped his hands on his pants. "All right. What is your plan?" Nyla explained what she had learned about the convoy system. The Corinth was not traveling alone. It was part of a chain of ships all following the same guidance beacon. The beacon sent signals that kept the ships in formation and prevented collisions in the dangerous debris field. If the beacon was disabled, all ships would be forced to stop until it was repaired. Emergency protocols would activate, and the convoy would freeze in place. "The beacon is in the central navigation chamber," Nyla said. "If we can get there and shut it down, the convoy stops. That buys us time." "Time for what?" Cody asked. "Time for human patrol ships to reach us. They monitor the edges of the fractured zone. If they detect an emergency signal, they have to respond. That is the law." Cody nodded slowly. "It could work. But the navigation chamber is guarded. Drex is not stupid. He knows the beacon is the heart of the convoy. Then we need a distraction." They spent the next several hours planning. Cody knew the ship's systems better than anyone. He found a path through maintenance tunnels that would get Nyla close to the navigation chamber. They identified weak points in the guard rotation and timing windows when the chamber would be least protected. But they needed something more. They needed a way to draw attention away from their real target. That night, Nyla visited Saren one last time. The Dendari woman was barely conscious. The chains had drained so much of her strength that she could hardly lift her head. But when she saw Nyla, her purple eyes flickered with recognition. "You came back," Saren whispered. "I always keep my promises," Nyla said. She knelt beside the chair and took one of Saren's silver hands in her own. "We have a plan. We are going to stop the convoy. But I need your help." Saren's eyes widened slightly. "My help? I can barely move. I have nothing left to give." "You have your mind," Nyla said. "The chains suppress your telepathic powers, but they do not eliminate them completely. Can you still send thoughts? Even weak ones?" Saren was silent for a moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Yes, small things. Feelings more than words. I could make someone feel confused or disoriented for a short time, but it would cost me greatly. I do not know if I would survive the effort." "I am not asking you to sacrifice yourself," Nyla said quickly. "I am asking you to give us a few minutes. Just enough confusion among the guards to let me reach the beacon." "Can you do that?" Saren looked at her for a long time. In her eyes, Nyla saw something she had not seen before. Not hope exactly, but something close to it. Determination. The will to fight back against the darkness that had consumed her life. "I will try," Saren said. For you, for the kindness you have shown me, for the reminder that not all beings in this universe are cruel." Nyla squeezed her hand. "Thank you. When this is over, you will be free. I promise." She left the cargo hold and met Cody at the entrance to the maintenance tunnels. They moved through the darkness, crawling through spaces so tight that Nyla felt the walls pressing against her shoulders. The ship groaned around them as it navigated through the debris field. Every sound made her heart jump. Finally, they reached a ventilation shaft that overlooked the navigation chamber. Nyla peered through the grate and saw the beacon, a tall pillar of pulsing white connected to dozens of cables and screens. 2 Velith guards stood at the entrance, their weapons ready. "Wait for the signal," Nyla whispered. Minutes passed. Then she felt something strange in her mind. A tingling sensation, like fingers brushing against her thoughts. The guards below suddenly stiffened. One of them looked around in confusion. The other shook his head as if trying to clear water from his ears. "Now," Nyla said. She dropped from the shaft and ran toward the beacon. The guards were too disoriented to react quickly. Cody was right behind her, holding a tool that could disable the central power coupling. They had seconds at most before the confusion cleared. Nyla reached the beacon and grabbed the main control panel. Her fingers flew over the switches, following the sequence Cody had taught her. Behind her, she heard the guards shouting, their voices growing sharper as Saren's distraction faded. "Hurry," Cody said. "One more switch. One more button." Nyla slammed her palm against the emergency shutdown, and the beacon's light flickered and died. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. The Corinth shuddered and began to slow. Somewhere in the distance, Nyla heard other ships in the convoy responding to the same emergency, their engines cutting power to avoid collision. The train had stopped, but when Nyla turned around, she found Commander Drex standing in the doorway, his 4 eyes burning with cold fury. "I knew you would try something foolish," he said. "I have been waiting for you." They betrayed and chained her. A human stopped the train in time part 2. 3 days passed on the Corinth. 3 days of dark corridors, cold meals, and the constant hum of engines pushing the massive ship through space. Nyla Voss kept her promise. Each night, when the Velith guards changed shifts and the corridors grew quiet, she made her way down to the secret cargo hold where Saren Kale remained chained. She brought water stolen from the kitchen supplies. She brought small pieces of bread hidden in her pockets. It was not much, but Saren accepted each offering with gratitude that made Nyla's heart ache. The Vendari diplomat was growing weaker by the day. The neural chains continued their terrible work, draining her life force drop by drop like water leaking from a cracked vessel. On the 4th night, Saren told Nyla the full story of her betrayal. She spoke of her sister, Mira Kale, who sat on the High Council of Thandara. Myra had always been ambitious. She had always craved power more than principle. When the Velith demanded a sacrifice to prevent another war, Myra had seen an opportunity. By handing over her own sister, she proved her loyalty to the council and eliminated a rival at the same time. "She came to see me before they took me," Saren said. Her voice was thin and tired. "She told me that my death would serve a greater purpose. She told me that peace required sacrifice, but I saw the truth in her eyes. She was not sorry. She was relieved." Nyla felt a cold fury building inside her. "Your own sister did this to you?" "Blood means nothing to those who hunger for power," Saren replied. "I spent my life believing in the good within all beings. I believed that even enemies could become friends if given enough time and understanding. Perhaps I was naive. Perhaps the universe is darker than I wanted to see." Nyla shook her head. "No, you were not wrong to believe in goodness. The fact that others betrayed that belief does not make it worthless. It makes them wrong, not you." Saren looked at her with those deep purple eyes. Something like hope flickered there, faint but real. You speak with such certainty. Where does that strength come from? Nyla thought about the question. She thought about her home on Earth, a small town in a place called Montana. She thought about her mother, who had raised 3 children alone after their father died. She thought about all the times her mother had worked double shifts, come home exhausted, and still found the strength to smile and tell her children that everything would be okay. It comes from watching people survive things that should have broken them, Nyla said. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. But we survive. We endure. And we help each other, even when it costs us everything. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Nyla knew what that meant. They were approaching a human checkpoint station. All ships passing through this region of space were required to stop for inspection. It was part of the treaty between humans and the Veleth. I have to go, Nyla said. There will be inspections. If they find me here, I cannot help you anymore. She hurried back to her quarters and prepared for the checkpoint procedures. The next morning, the Corinth docked at Station 12, a human military outpost built into the side of a massive asteroid. Human soldiers came aboard to inspect the cargo and verify the ship's documentation. Lieutenant Hannah Cole led the inspection team. She was a tall woman with red hair pulled back in a tight braid and eyes that missed nothing. Nyla watched from a distance as Cole moved through the ship, checking cargo holds and questioning crew members. The lieutenant was efficient and professional, but she was also bound by the treaty. There were places on the ship she was not allowed to go. The prisoner hold was one of those places. Commander Drex met with Lieutenant Cole in the main corridor. His 4 eyes watched her with cold amusement. Your inspection is complete, Lieutenant. You have found nothing out of order. Now please leave my ship so we may continue our journey. Cole frowned. There are sections of this vessel that were not included in the inspection. Protocol requires full access to all cargo areas. Protocol requires access to commercial cargo, Drex corrected. Prisoner transport falls under Dominion military jurisdiction. Your treaty does not grant you authority to interfere with our internal security matters. Nyla saw the frustration on Cole's face. The lieutenant knew something was wrong. She could sense it. But the rules bound her hands as surely as chains bound Saren. Without thinking, Nyla stepped forward. She caught Cole's eye and tried to communicate something, anything, that might alert the lieutenant to the situation. But before she could speak, a heavy hand landed on her shoulder. Cargo handler Voss, Drex said, his voice cold and dangerous. You are needed in the lower section. Now. Nyla had no choice but to obey. She followed a Veleth guard away from the inspection team, her heart pounding in her chest. When they reached an empty corridor, Drex appeared behind her. I know what you have been doing, the commander said. His 4 eyes bore into her like drills. I know you have been visiting the prisoner. I know you have been bringing her supplies. Did you think we would not notice? Nyla said nothing. Her mouth was dry, and her legs were shaking. You have violated the terms of your employment contract, Drex continued. More importantly, you have violated the treaty between our species. If I report your actions, it could cause an interstellar incident. Your government would be forced to punish you severely to maintain diplomatic relations. Then report me, Nyla said. The words came out before she could stop them. Tell everyone what you are doing. Tell them about the innocent woman you are dragging to her death. Let the galaxy see the kind of justice the Veleth believe in. Drex laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound. Innocent? The Vendari gave her to us willingly. Her own people declared her a criminal. We are simply carrying out the sentence they were too cowardly to perform themselves. She committed no crime, Nyla said. Her only offense was wanting peace. Peace is a weakness, Drex replied. It is a fantasy invented by those who lack the strength to take what they want. The strong rule, and the weak serve. That is the natural order of the universe. Your species will learn this lesson eventually, or you will be swept away like dust. He leaned closer, his gray face filling her vision. Stay away from the prisoner. If I catch you near her again, I will have you thrown into space without a suit. The treaty does not protect those who violate it first. He walked away, leaving Nyla alone in the dark corridor. She stood there for a long time, her hands pressed against the cold metal wall. Fear and anger battled inside her. She thought about Saren, chained and dying in the depths of the ship. She thought about the train that was carrying her toward death. The Velith called it a convoy, but it was really a train. Once you were locked on, your destination was set. The route was fixed. The schedule was unchangeable. The only way to escape was to stop the train before it reached the end of the line. Nyla made her decision. She would find a way to stop the train. She did not know how yet, but she would figure it out. Because watching injustice and doing nothing made you part of it. Because some things were worth risking everything for. Because she was human, and humans did not abandon those who needed help. The checkpoint inspection ended. The Corinth detached from Station 12 and continued its journey. Ahead lay the Fractured Zone, a dangerous region of space where communication was impossible and help would never come. Nyla had very little time. But she was not alone. Somewhere on this ship, there had to be others who still believed in doing the right thing. She just had to find them.